So thank you everyone for coming to my talk. I hope you all were able to attend Jenny's just before mine, because I'm going to be kind of building a little bit on what she shared. But my goal here is to really communicate that now is a fantastic time to get into this industry and perhaps offer some perspective of how to do that. So first off, a little bit about me. And is the clicker working? There we are. So a little bit about my background. I'm a producer at VRLab, and I've actually also just recently taken a role at the Institute for Human Machine Cognition as a senior research and product development associate doing an AR/VR product. But I've actually worked in a lot of different aspects in the location-based VR industry. Most recently, I was the producer on the Blue Deep Rescue for Dreamscape. But I've also owned and operated a VR arcade in the San Francisco area. We'd had a seasonal pop-up store inside of West Coast Leather right next to the Chinatown Gate, where we got to actually test and market a lot of VR products, as well as host events and also really learn a lot about the industry as I was growing up. But I've also had some experience as an entrepreneur. I've raised over $10 million in venture capital financing. I have conceived, built, scaled, and sold a couple of venture-funded startups, Sand Hill Road funded. So I do know the grind. It's a lot of work, and my goal here today is to help you maybe do not as much work to get into this industry. All right, so that was about me, a little bit about you. I'm going to try and see everybody the best I can, but by a show of hands, how many of you are perhaps investors in this space or interested in getting into VR? Anyone? Okay, great. And how about entrepreneurs looking to start a business in this sector? All right, there we go. And anyone actually interested in starting a content studio to build content for VR? Okay, wonderful. Now, there's also an opportunity here for people who are social media marketers, planners, producer types, really, because you're going to be the backbone of this industry, creating the events that bring the people in. But do you have anyone in those sectors, perhaps? Fantastic. And then another one, anyone who enjoys giving VR experiences, someone who loves operating experiences, sharing it with friends, family? Okay, great. The final one is people who have access to event space. This could be convention centers, restaurants, bars. Yeah, all right, fantastic, wonderful. Well, so really the goal here is I want to really first kind of cover the differences between at-home entertainment and location-based entertainment, and then I'm going to define a couple of different roles and really encourage you to really get good in that one and maybe partner with the other roles so you could have a successful business. And so doing that, I'm going to step through a couple different business models that have been proven to work. Not all of them, obviously we don't have time for that, but maybe just kind of talk to some of the ones I know. And then I want to step you through an example of a profitable location-based VR business plan. This is going to be just a hypothetical company, doesn't exist, but maybe it could exist. You're welcome to take this slide with you and use it as your plan if you like. I'll give you a link at the very end to take this home with you. And if we have a little bit of time, maybe I'll have some time to share some stories from the trenches. So at-home VR versus location-based VR. It really is kind of obvious, but it just has got to be stated that the core difference is that with at-home entertainment, the guest has a direct relationship with a content studio building the product. And they have a lot of time to develop that relationship. You could create really deep stories. You can give them complicated controls that they could gain mastery over. But fundamentally, the guest is required for operating their own gear, downloading the app, and typically this experience may be mediated through an app store, through Oculus or Steam or what have you, but eventually they're going to fall in love with Bethesda, Skyrim, or wherever. However, with location-based, the relationship is no longer between the content studio and the guest. It's actually between the guest and the venue, because location-based is core location, right? And you got to really think in terms of getting a person to an event, and in order to do that, you need a couple other roles in this ecosystem. So the studio is still there. They're now mediated through the venue, but now you have an agent and an operator. And I'm going to go a little more detail on this, but really you need someone to be able to reach out to the audience, develop an audience, fill the tickets, right? Make sure that you could maybe achieve something like Dreamscape with their 80% fill rate, which is phenomenal. But then you also need good operators. You can make the technology transparent to the user, it's seamless and flawless. And so now I'm going to go into these various roles, and my purpose there is to help focus you in your consideration of this sector and about how to approach the market. And it really starts off with the guest. So the key thing with a guest is to create a user persona of who you really want to deliver your location-based experience to. This is important for your marketing, to figure out how many people are in your geographic area that you can actually give VR to. This is important for studios to craft the right content. This is important for operators to know like what level of technical expertise that the user is going to have in terms of understanding controls. But the guest user persona is also really good for solving debates interdepartmentally of like what's best, because you sometimes when you're building these things, you'll get into, well, I think it should be this, I think it should be that. Well, it's not about I or you, it's now about this archetypical customer that we've come up with. So this is a very tried and true method from interactive design. It's very, very important for location-based design. Now, as for the venue, we really think in terms of the high end of Dreamscape and the Void, and these wonderful VR arcades are coming in. But really, venues can be everything. We actually operated a pop-up store inside of a retail clothing store in San Francisco very successfully, and we actually found that there was some great synergies between the store and our facility. Guests, as they were waiting in line, would shop the store, buy jackets. It really was kind of a win-win for both the venue as well as the agent and operator in our situation. But venues could also be things like conferences. The one from below is SVVR giving demos at Makers Fair. So when you come to a venue, it's important to think of the space. Is there a good space to actually host VR? Is there a good space to hold people as they're waiting to go into the experience? So some spaces are not necessarily great for that. So be really critical when you're considering what you have to offer and make sure that it's appropriate for the medium. Now, the agent. This is really the lifeblood of location-based VR. You really need someone to go out there and make the event happen, and someone with a wedding planner type mentality is probably the best person for you. Not only do they have to organize the event, they have to think of the guest list, they have to think of how to market to these people, how to create a relationship with them, how to bring them in. It's really important that you create a tribe with these users, and the agent is going to be the person who's going to be interacting with that community. So one of the successful location-based VR paradigms is that of creating developer groups even. You see that a lot in the Bay Area. But you can even have tribes of e-sport participants that are actually using your VR arcade as a place of hosting their competitions, and you want that agent out there letting people know what the status of the leaderboards are and such. Now, coming into the experience, not only are they producing the event, but they're also doing something exceptionally important, which is they're protecting the operator's focus. Now, this is really key, especially when you have uncontrolled spaces where people standing in line could interfere with the experience. The agent is there to be kind of a firewall to make sure that people have a smooth transition from waiting to go into the event to actually having the experience. So that brings me to the operator role. In the movie The Matrix, Neo didn't have to learn how to use Steam VR or download drivers or any of that other crazy stuff that we have to deal with in VR. He thankfully had this guy Tank who taught him Kung Fu and just did it by hitting a magic button. Well, for Tank, it's not a magic button. He knows how all that stuff operates and works, and he has a concierge personality type to give the user a transparent experience. Now, this can be a developer, and a lot of smaller teams, they'll take their developer staff and they'll have them be the operator. Sometimes that works, but fundamentally, you really need someone with a personality type has a high empathy for what the user is experiencing, and maybe it can get ahead of where there's confusion or direct the user through the experience. Not to call out names, but I have gone to some VR arcades where they had like 6 stations and then like 2 operators, and that was terrible because you actually had some people in their experience like having a question of what was going on, and they weren't being monitored, and they just like spent half their bought time trying to figure out how to get to a menu or do matchmaking. And that's breaks immersion and makes it unpleasant for everybody. So it's really important to have one operator per experience, making sure that experience goes off flawlessly. Now, as for the studio, building content for location-based VR, again, you have to work with these different roles. You have to make sure that your content is going to fit the form factor of the venue. It has to fit the form factor of what the agent needs in terms of user flow coming in and out of your experience. If you make an experience for at home, you could do great tutorials and demos, but if you're making it for location-based experience, it's going to be an operated experience. So some of those controls need to be abstracted out to the operator. So again, be very cognizant of where you sit in this ecosystem and how you could be of service to the other roles that are within it. So now I'm going to step into a couple of the business models. These are not all of them, mind you, these are just some of the more common ones, and I think we all are familiar with how the VR arcade works, where a guest pays the arcade directly. The arcade then handles licensing with the studio. They handle retaining agents who will do their social media marketing and work the front desk and the like, and they hire operators to come in and manage and maintain the equipment. And this is one very successful way, and quite frankly, this is a great way of having like a Vive business and setting up a space. But another business model that's also very effective is the mobile VR event. This is where the agent and the operator are an independent team, and they organize with a venue, and they develop a relationship with them. This could be a small team working out of a restaurant. This could be someone actually doing a venue like AWE and bringing their experience to this venue, and the agent then has to go in there and work with AWE to get the booth space and everything else. But herein it lies the difference is now the guest is working through the agent to get the experience, so the agent is now responsible for swiping the credit card, getting the money, making sure that the balance sheet's good and everything, so you need a little bit more of an operator role in that regard. But another business model that's also successful is, and I call this one the conference, but this is like a product marketing type business model where the studio has some content, they want to get it out there, and they want to provide the experience for free to the users. Now we saw this yesterday when DreamWorks showed the How to Train Your Dragon experience. It was showing at Walmart. And their business model was exit through the gift shop model. So people would come in, have a free VR experience about how to train your dragon, and then when we were done with the VR experience, they'd walk out through the gift shop, they would buy some neat toys and stuff, and they probably would actually give more money to that than they would have if they had just bought a ticket. And buying a ticket in that model actually had brought friction into the experience, and they may have had less people go through it. So again, these are not all the business models, just be creative when you're thinking about how to mix and match these roles and making sure that each one gets value along the way. So now I would like to lay out a hypothetical location-based business, show you how it makes money, and identify what some of the costs are, and show you how this could work. So we're going to start off with the studio. And this hypothetical studio has created a user persona that they're going to target say teenage boys who want to do a team capture the flag experience. Well, in order to do that, they know, okay, well, it's going to be a team experience. We're going to have to do co-located VR. And for our studio, we don't actually want to own a venue. We want to do the mobile VR business model. So what we want to do is we want to go to, say, basketball courts. This is something that pretty much any high school in middle America has access to. So there's venues everywhere. So we're going to use Oculus Quest for this. We're going to do our co-location through that. We're going to build a custom experience that our agents and operators are going to sideload into their Oculus Quest. And they're going to operate on this model where the studio is going to create the content. They're going to have the agents run the business. They're going to be their distribution for them. The operators are then going to be able to pay a royalty back to the studio for use of the experience. The agent's plan on this one is that they're going to be running, in this hypothetical again, 3 15-minute sessions per hour with 6 people per session. That's 72 people in 4 hours. And by the way, 4 hours for an operating team, that's about the limit. It's really mentally exhausting. So if you want to do an 8-hour event, I'd actually recommend 2 teams for that. But let's keep it, make it something that the agent and operator could do part-time. We're going to do $20 per play, and this is going to be an e-sport, so hopefully we'll get lots of plays here, but $2 will go back to the studio. There's going to be a staff and an operator, and these guys, they're going to get paid. So you could be the investor here saying, I'm going to invest in this, and I'm going to hire an agent and an operator to run this business. I'm going to pay them a good salary because, again, this is not minimum wage work. This is very sophisticated work, and you want people who are really motivated to do it. we're going to reserve $350 for the venue and spend $100 marketing each one of our events. So this is the basic economics for how the agent operator team is going to work out in this model. They're going to only invest about $5,000. So this is like a swipe the credit card and let's go do something part-time, make some money kind of a business. They're going to go out and buy like 6 Oculus Quests. They're going to go contact a local high school and say, hey, can we use your gymnasium a couple nights a week? And then they're going to use Facebook to build a tribe of users who are interested in doing this esport. And then over the course of the year, about a couple months in, they're going to flip profit. And what the economics of this workout is, after a $5,000 initial setup, they return $5,200 in profit. They did $173 in annual revenue on a side business that they only did 2 nights per week. And what's interesting here is the venue out of this model was paid $42,000, so that's really enough to negotiate a really great deal with the venue. And I'm sure the venue would be very enthusiastic to give that amount of money. And the agent and operators themselves are making $160 a night. So really, if you're the investor in this and maybe you just want to work as an agent one night and you want to hire someone else the next night, that's pretty good. You could definitely find some good talent at that pay scale. So here's how the studio plan works out in this model. Now, the studio has a lot more upfront expenses. They have to actually create the experience, especially with this Oculus Quest demo that hypothetical I've laid out. You're going to sideload this in. You're going to have a little bit more work on the front end. So we're going to spend a whole month up front planning out our experience. I'm going to give it a month, so that'll be good for like 2 good sprints. And then after we get our basic mechanics worked out for this experience, we'll then staff up with a couple other roles in the studio plan. Spend 3 months working on it. That gives us time to do 6 sprints. Month 5 is when we release. And boom, we're out to 16 teams in that first month. We're doing our testing. Now what's important here is that we didn't roll off the development team, because what we're going to do is we're going to iterate on what we learn. And when we first go out there, we're going to do a lot of good things, and we're going to do some bad things. And the idea is that next product push, we're going to take out the bad and do more good. So by keeping the team working through this, we can actually do 3 product iterations to increase our traction, maybe create new different experiences, mix it up. But fundamentally, the main growth factor in this one is that we are growing how many teams are delivering our experience as a marketing manager starts developing relationships with them and growing their distribution network. And what this works out to on the studio side is, for $600,000 in investment, they'll return $500,000 in profit in their first year on a $1.8 million in revenue. So kind of a small studio, but profitable. They'll do 3 product releases that year, and they'll have a distribution network at the end with 200 mom and pop teams distributing their product. So again, this is a hypothetical, but I just wanted to lay out to you that now is a great time to get into this space and to really consider what it is that you want to do and how you want to participate. But there is this opportunity here. The numbers are working out now because the equipment has become so inexpensive, and it's become so much easier to onboard people. And there has been a time when VR was really hard to deliver, but now we've kind of worked through what the differences look like between home and location-based VR, and we kind of know, a lot of companies out there have done experiments on how to do this, and I'm sharing that knowledge with you today. If you figure out what role you want to do in this, like let's say you've got a restaurant and you're like, man, it'd be really awesome if we had like a side area. We had this unused convention space over here on our side. We could do some VR there. Well, now you know that you need to go out there and find agents and operators to give the demos, studios willing to license content to you. We've also stopped through a couple of business models about what works, what we know is out there in the market. And I gave you a hypothetical business plan to show you that the numbers do balance out. It just takes some work, takes some dedication, takes some testing. So with that, I'm happy to share stories from the trenches. There's definitely some conventional wisdom that if you get into this industry, you need to be aware of. Things like make sure you have business insurance and have waivers that people sign. You are getting people in off the street, so you really never know quite what you're going to get. We actually had an interesting scenario happen where someone was waiting to come into one of our experiences and had a grand mal seizure while they were waiting to go in. And had they gone through our experience and then had the seizure, we would have just assumed that the VR had caused it and our business would be over. So, that's the kind of thing you just don't know what you don't know about. As the case ends up with this person, they were an alcoholic and they really had no business being out doing that. But I've heard some other horror stories from other arcade operators of some crazy things that happen. People fall down, people run into walls. So again, business insurance consideration, make sure your operators are being very, very comfortable and considerate with your guests, giving them a good experience. But things break, and you have to have professional grade gear. But I'm happy to go in deeper with Q&A. I think we have a little bit more time to answer any questions, so I'll open it up.